Why don't we get started? Won't you share kind of the history of the ranch, of where it started and where we are today?
Okay. My family came here in 1931 from eastern Kansas, around the Lecompton area. My great-grandfather, Winter, actually is one that purchased the ranch. And my grandparents, Howard and Jean Brass, moved down here at the time of purchase and set up a family and ranching business here. Howard was an auctioneer back in eastern Kansas, and so when he came here, he started a cow-calf operation, but then also continued his auctioneering business, and which helped support the family. He auctioned at a number of local livestock auctions and opportunities, and so for a number of years he was very active in the auction business. He was partners in the Medicine Lodge Livestock as well as Coldwater Livestock. The boys, there was three boys, and he had three boys in that family, and so they took care of the ranch a lot of times when he was gone at auctions. And so that's kind of the origin of it. We purchased it from the Estelle family, Estelle and Sims, and which they settled in 1878. So that's a little bit of that history. Then my father was born after they moved here to this location. He took it over after he got out of college. Then kind of the same thing. I took over after I got out of college, and my girls are in the process as well. So it's been a family-run operation forever. My wife Mindy and the girls are all actively involved in it. So that's a little bit of the history of it. Things haven't changed much. At one point, the cow deal got a little tough in early 80s, and we switched to yearlings. So we ran yearlings for a number of years. And then around 2000, ended up running yearlings and some cows. And then in the drought of 2012, we ended up selling off all the yearlings, kept the cows, and then as we rebuilt after the drought, we just went to all cows.
Can you visit a little bit about your role as a steward to the land, pasture management practices, and how those practices will keep you out of trouble in a drought situation?
Our largest resource right here is our native grass, and so it's very valuable that we learn how to manage it properly. And just the information technology that has developed over the years, we are so much better stewards of the ground now than we were when I was a kid. We have more fuel, we have more grass. We do rotational grazing. We do believe that grass needs rest. So the viability of that grass plant is what we're after. And so if we're not managing that, then we're not managing the ranch well. So that's one of our big focuses, and we continue to learn. I don't think we ever get it all figured out. But that's one of the things that we work on is stewardship through managing grass and through rotation. But one of the big things we deal with out here, of course, is cedar infestation. So one of our big things forever has been cedar control. We've got very active in it. The DeGear family, which are neighbors to the east, that great family relationship. We're very fortunate to have very good neighbors out here. We can't take that for granted. The DeGear family is one of the first ones to start burning in this area, and we're working with them. And so we started burning, I suppose, 70s and 80s. We started doing some. We've made a lot of progress in that area. And with mechanical cutting and burning, we've cleared a lot of cedars off the place. So we have the ranch, I think, in fairly good shape. We do want to leave some forage out there. We don't want to just take it all every year, just because you do have the dry times. And if we don't have some cover on this ground that has this slope to it, that's when we get into trouble. When the Anderson Creek fire came through, actually it worked quite well for us. We had a lot of the cedar problems taken care of. So when the Anderson Creek fire came through, it was just a great maintenance burn over the whole ranch. And so that really worked well for us. But stewardship is very important for us, which requires some development, some water development. We're very fortunate. We've got a lot of running water. We've got Mule Creek that runs right through the center of the ranch. A lot of ponds that have been built. So we're, water-wise, we feel we're very fortunate compared to a lot of people.
When you talk about the Anderson Creek fire, have you seen a significant difference in the amount of water you have now from creeks or streams since that fire?
You know, I get asked that a lot. It's hard for me to tell. Right here in this immediate local area, a lot of the producers have been so aggressive in cedar control over the last 15, 20 years that a lot of the real burden on the water had been taken care of with the big cedar groves and the big canyons already taken care of. So the Anderson Creek fire didn't change the landscape of a lot of this through here so much, other than a good maintenance burn. It's really hard for me to tell. There are certain areas where, yes, I can tell we have more water here. But then there are areas that I think we should have more that we don't. So I certainly don't have it all figured out.
But we've seen Mule Creek change just, since we've lived out here, it's not wide and shallow anymore. The bank's more sloped and it's a little deeper, and so it's changed courses in a pasture too.
So all the water dynamics is a little bit confusing to us. 40 years ago, there was a lot more farm ground around, and now it's all been planted back to grass. And I know that has to have an impact on water runoff and what the impact it has on the creek. So what we give credit to is, I'm not sure where the credit goes, where the burning and planting back to grass and those sort of things.
So can you talk a little bit about the cow-calf operation in general? You spoke that you've made some changes through the years, that you dabbled with the yearlings and cow-calf, but primarily cow-calf now. Can you talk a little bit about that, possibly some genetics or breeding strategies that you've utilized and why you've went that way?
What we have is a spring calving cow-calf herd. One of our main focuses is on working with nature, and so we calve a little later. We start calving in April, and then we wean our calves in the middle of October. So they're essentially 180-day-old calf is what we're weaning and getting rid of. We have primarily Angus-based cow herd. We focus on our genetics more on a lot of maternal characteristics, low maintenance. Here again, we're working with native grass here. We don't have access to farm ground, and we want to try to keep things as simple and manageable as we can. So we work on low input. We have kind of a low input program. We feed cottonseed cake, and not a lot of it. And we grass bank through our rotational program. We grass bank grass, and so we rotate cattle through the winter. We feed very little hay. We do have some that we'll feed for our 2-year-olds, and of course storm hay. But we continue to rotate through the winter and minimize our feed requirements because of that. And I think that's one of the things that works well for us. Our program, we're very fortunate that all our ranch is contiguous, and that makes management so much easier. I know friends that they've got a quarter here, a half section here, and they're having to haul cattle, and so we feel very fortunate that we're all in one piece. So it makes rotation and management so much easier, and that's one of the things we really focus on is managing what we've got right here.
Can you share a little bit about what are you doing with your calves when it's time for weaning? Are you retaining heifers, selling steers, or are you retaining ownership through everything, or how's that working?
So one of the things that we struggle with out here, we're halfway between Medicine Lodge and Coldwater. Sometimes it's difficult to get help. So over the years, the way our business has evolved is we have tried to minimize labor and make it simple. And as a result of that, what our current program is, we're not afraid to change it at any time. What our current program is we sell our steer calves right off the cow. We typically forward contract them through Superior Livestock or other ways. We will then keep our heifers and the lighting of the steer calves and some crumbs. We'll keep them and we'll overwinter them. And from those heifers, we will pick replacements out of that we will, after we've had some time, let them grow and see which ones we like. So we'll pick our replacements out of our heifer crop, and then the rest we will go to grass with that summer and sell as feeders in August. That's how our breeding system works. We have a closed herd. We rarely are buying anything that wasn't raised right here.
You talk about your location and being difficult to find labor. We've got your daughters here and your wife here. Can you talk about the role that they play with the ranch?
It's vital, vital. One of the things that we like to focus on is stewardship of the livestock. I think that is so important. If we have cattle we can't handle, management goes south pretty fast. So we really focus on that. Mindy and I, she can be in a pickup and me horseback. We can move about all of our cattle anywhere we want to. The girls grew up actively involved in the ranch. Fortunately, we got them started early where they didn't realize they had a choice at the time, and they've taken to enjoy it. And so they've been actively involved. They've always had an interest in the cow herd, and they are partners in the business at this time. And so we do have a plan for the future, and it's them. Victoria, she was at one time an extension agent, and she resigned from that position, and she comes out and helps me 3 days a week. Victoria is married, has a family, and her husband has a starter yard south of Protection, so I take advantage of him as well. In a few years, I'll be taking advantage of her kids, or we will be. Hannah, of course, is a practicing attorney in Medicine Lodge, so we're very fortunate to have both girls close, and I can call her, and if it will fit in her schedule, she will come out, and she comes out, tries to come out a couple days a week, and so that's very vital. They're already broke in. They know the pastures and how to get there, and kind of how we do our program. So that's really taken a load off me and Mindy.
Yes.
What's the impact been on your lives now and your career paths, work ethics, those sorts of things? I mean, growing up here, how's it impacted the rest of your life?
I'll go first. I think work ethic is one of the bigger things that has really affected me here. Like my dad said, we didn't really realize that we had a choice growing up because we didn't. This is just, you wake up and here's what we're going to do today. And that's just what you do. And I think that's just pretty common in agriculture. These are values that are ingrained in our families and our businesses because they're necessary. Your family life is so intertwined with your business life. It's just really hard to separate the two. And the work ethic thing, that was something I heard throughout college and into my professional career interviewing for things. Even in like cities, they liked to see that farm and ranch experience on a resume because there are good qualities there that they just don't find in other people. Translating into my law practice, there are a lot of things I learned out here that are very helpful. And one of the things that my dad mentioned that I see as really key is neighbor relationships. A huge part of my legal practice is because people don't have good neighbor relationships. And so that has really brought it into focus for me, how important it is and how lucky we are to be in a really good environment here. And that it's very important to maintain that. You know, we work hard to maintain good neighbor relationships because it's important and it's the right thing to do. But we also just really enjoy being out here too. I'm sure Tori feels the same way, that we enjoy coming out here. We enjoy this kind of work. There are some days where you're not doing enjoyable things, but overall it's a very good quality of life and something that, we can see the visible results of our work. Our parents were always big on that too. Building fence, it was like a job that we always hated. But our dad's big thing was when we were done, you take a step back and look at it because you built that and it's going to be there every day for the rest of your life until you tear it down. Yeah, same kind of thing on the work ethic. This was all I ever knew. And so anytime I'd go someplace else and, just get to know other people, and the work ethic made a big impact on me. As Dad said, I, was a former extension agent in Comanche County. And even though I was the family and consumer science agent, there was still a lot of things that I was noticing that made an impact by living and working on the ranch and dealing with agriculture and being involved in 4-H. We were pretty big in that. It helped to get a better idea of extension and also help explain that to other people. But like I said, working out here, like everyone has said, it's nice peace of mind, a nice family operation. And
You bet. Mindy, is there anything you want to share about raising a family out here, being part of the operation?
No, other than the fact that Dave and I have talked about it, makes it easier, I guess, to raise a family out here, because you can just, makes it very easy to say, nope, you just can't do that. Nope, we're too far from town. Nope, you just need to stay and work. So that was, that made it a little easier for us when they reached the teenage years, although we, I think we were very fortunate to have raised the daughters we raised. They love working on the ranch with their dads, so.
that was the other thing. I mean, like Hannah mentioned, like you mentioned, at the time, we didn't like it, and we didn't like the small picture of it. But now that we're grown, we're like, wow, I really appreciate that they told us no, and that we didn't have to consume our lives with small things that weren't going to make an impact after school instead of this, which can be our future.
You bet. Dave, you talked about the girls being a very vital part of the ranch and the future of the ranch. Do you want to elaborate on that any? I mean,
Well, I think it's very important these days to have a transition plan. There is agriculture as you just look around. We're all getting older. We not feel like it, but get to working around my children, and I realize, they're doing things a lot faster and a lot quicker than I am. So, the ranch, if we're going to have a good business, and it's been a rewarding business for us, if we want that to continue, we have to make an effort in the transition process. And so we have actively made that effort, and with their input as well, and that transition process is in place. And so it's rewarding for Mindy and I, and we hope it's rewarding for them as well. And one of the focuses of our management practice has been to keep it simple, where it's not a highly complex, you've got to live here every minute to keep things moving. And so that's been our focus with Mindy and I and them, that through this transition process, we have a good enough program set up that there really wouldn't be a whole lot of change.
And our dad is very data oriented. I think he drives my mom crazy because he's always working on spreadsheets and stuff. So that's how he maintains his cow records, but also our grazing and inputs basically. So that's something that he shares with us every so often, just to let us know what he's updated, so we can try out different things. That's how we plan our grazing for the year. So some things like that, or even if I'm not out here every day, I still kind of know what's going on and where cattle are, because it keeps very good records about that too.
And Dave's big focus, a lot of is continuing education, and him and the girls have done some of the classes over the past year or so, just knowledge, just, like Dave said, there's, people are smarter than you sometimes. You need to know the updated things to do.
Most of the time.
But, just updating and keeping up to date on the newest, management practices and grazing and just everything, it's important.
Yeah, he's been big on continuing ed, and done that, throughout his whole life, but looped us in more on that in the last few years. And one of the things that he's really driven home for us is that you have to work with what you got. I mean, we've heard him say several times today about working with Mother Nature, not against Mother Nature. So one thing that he's really talked about a lot throughout our lives was that it's easy to look at an operation that's doing very well and try and just copy and paste their good ideas onto yours. Some of them might work, some of them won't, but it's tempting to do that. But you might end up fighting against nature too much, or some of the other resources you have. Maybe, yeah, you could be more productive if you did it this way, but maybe you don't enjoy that at all, or you can't get the labor to help you do that. So it just ends up being more of a problem. So continuing to learn as much as possible, apply that to the strengths and weaknesses of your operation. I think that's something that our parents have done very well.
But also just being open-minded. Don't be so closed off to your specific thing, because something else might work better, or changing just a little bit here might affect the whole system, whole range. So.
One of my things for continued education is like producers meetings and different things that, sometimes, there's much of it is repetition that you've heard before, but there's that little tidbit that you've heard that, you kind of catalog that in the back of your mind, and you might think, oh, I'm so far away from that that'll never happen. And I can think of some specific things that then over the years, so you have those things in your mind, and over the years you hear those again, and you think, oh, I guess I am a little closer to that. Then you wake up one day and you're almost there. So it's not like you're going to go to a producers meeting and realize, oh, I've got to do everything 180 degrees different. That you start learning things and you slowly start gravitating towards a direction, and it doesn't have to be a radical shift in your whole program. But I think continuing to learn is critical, because the industry is always changing, and if you're not paying attention to that, I think you wake up one day and you're so far behind where you need to be that it's going to be really hard to catch up.
There's still some like trade work that goes on in this area, not as much as there was a generation ago or 2 generations ago. But that was something that we liked as kids, getting to go help someone else get off the ranch. And so there's still a little bit of that goes on, not as much, but that was a good example of maintaining those good neighbor relationships. And they were always fun times. Also, as kids, it was like our chance to get lectured on the way over there about how this is their show, we're doing it their way, you're going to follow their instructions. So that was good for us too. And we learned some things sometimes, some things that worked well and some that didn't. So yeah, maintaining those relationships has been really good, and it makes it more enjoyable. These days we do more of that with like the Prescribed Burn Association, not so much cattle work, but stewardship type work. And I haven't been on very many of those. My dad's been on a lot more. Tori and I have only been on a few, but it is cool to see, like we'll be burning in someone's pasture and we can tell they're prepping for next year's burn in the next pasture, and just to see other people making strides toward that too, which is a whole lot easier with a cooperative effort and some support too. So that's been a cool thing to watch out here in our part of the country.
And then in the same aspect, the family heritage and passing it on from generation, Dave has aunts who are still living who, love the ranch, and it's very dear to their heart, and they've shared that love with their family, and their family has come out and they appreciate it the same way that their parents did. And to see the fact that basically it's just how it was when their mother grew up or their grandmother grew up. The land is still the same for the most part. And so to stand, where their grandparent or their mother stood and went to school at an old schoolhouse, is pretty neat.
Mm-hmm. And that even goes beyond our family a little bit. So Dad mentioned that the Brasses and Winters bought this from the Estelle and Sims family. The Sims, there are some like Sims in Kansas still, and they have come out to show like their family's homestead. None of them have lived here for almost 100 years, but it's still their family's homestead too. So that's neat. We all really like history a lot.
Yeah.
So we're always looking for cool stories like that.
Yeah.
This time of COVID, places like this have become pretty popular. Everybody like to live out in the country these days.
We're everybody's favorite vacation.
Yes. People want to come hunt and come fish, and
drive
it's kind
around.
of funny how that works.
That was another perk of growing up out here, was our access to just space, being able to go on like hikes and fish. We didn't get into the hunting as much, but in high school, Tori and I were taking a class at Discovery Days, like the 4-H camp, and we wanted to take a fishing class, and they told us you had to have a fishing license, and we thought it was a joke. We didn't know that fishing licenses were a thing because we were so spoiled growing up out here with, you want to go fish, go fish. So we didn't take the class because we were going to buy a fishing license.
Dave and Mindy, Victoria and Hannah, thanks for being a part of Barber County Cattlemen's Tour. Dave, welcome back to the Cattlemen's Association. Appreciate your service years ago and look forward to the family being involved moving forward, not only with your ranch, but hopefully with the Cattlemen's Association. Thank you for your time, and we wish you well on the future.
Thank you.